Morning, trying to kind of clean the decks on any House bills that have already come over before crossover day or remained pending from last year, as well as any Senate bills where the senators have requested hearings. We did have a couple of sort of late arriving Senate bills that came in that didn't have time to be heard given our agenda before our deadline for getting on rules calendar for tomorrow. But I want to do the courtesy of the authors of letting them be heard on their bills just in case they come up somewhere later in the process during this session, or to start the conversation for next year, so we'll have a fresh, clean slate as we start our meetings post crossover day on Thursday afternoon. The first one's House Bill 437, Representative Howard. We heard this last year. It deals with stickers on the fuel pumps at convenience stores and gas stations to sort of alert handicapped people of a phone number to call inside so that you can have an attendant come out and help you pump your gas if necessary. We heard this last year. Agriculture Department came forward and said they would take care of it voluntarily. Representative Howard says that hasn't happened and he requested a hearing. We advised him of the hearing date today. We told him on Friday that we were working him in, called his office again today, and apparently he has some type of difficulty and may not be here. Is there anybody else that would like to be heard on that bill today? Because I will not be holding a subsequent hearing on it. Be glad to hear it today, but we may try to fit it in for a vote at another meeting, but I will not be taking further testimony. I see Sheila Humberstone. Would you like to be heard on House Bill 437?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief.
All right.
Sheila Humberstone. I'm here at Ms. Denver's Consulting here today on behalf of Georgia Association of Convenience Stores. Just wanted to let you know we have worked with the bill sponsor and we are comfortable with the language of the bill. We think he's come a long way. We appreciate him hearing our needs. We have communicated with our members at least throughout the process. Originally, he did an urging resolution urging convenience stores to provide that information. So we put that out into our magazine and periodically message to our members, and we have messaged them throughout this process. So we're comfortable with the intent, and we're comfortable with our ability to adhere to the law should it become law.
So I don't know what type of changes you're referencing. If they happened in the House.
They did.
I'm working off the pink sheet, which is the as passed the House version. There have been no further changes recommended to me or suggested to me by Representative Howard. So
We are comfortable
this
with the
is
bill
good?
as it stands.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anybody got questions for Ms. Humberstone about this legislation?
You're ready for a motion, sir?
Seeing no questions, then what's the pleasure?
Thank
Well,
you.
I sort of hate to take action without the representative being here.
Just hold off for a minute.
We'll hold off on motions, give him a chance to come and make certain that he still wants to pursue this. I don't see anybody else signed up to speak either for or against it, so committee members just take a look at it. It's pretty simple in its purpose and how it accomplishes that, just to help handicapped people be able to get access to an attendant to come out and help pump their gas if needed. Okay, next bill, Senate Bill 561. This is Senator Bruce Thompson's bill. It's hearing only since we're beyond crossover date cutoff. But this is an issue that's come up several times over the last years, and I promised a hearing. It looks like we have 5 or 6 people signed up. I'll start with Mr. Lee Lemke. Senator Thompson, he must be on the campaign trail this morning. He's unavailable and let us know he couldn't be here to present his bill, but he is going to let Mr. Lemke do that for him. Specialty contractors.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate being able to address the group this morning. This bill was carried by Senator Thompson. Unfortunately, he does have a speaking engagement. In fact, there's 2 of them. And but this bill is very important. It was brought by the 4 boards, and they were asked to do this by the Secretary of State to look at the laws and keep them in line with board rules. The changes are needed to be made to update the industries as they get bigger, and laws need to be revised to get them in line with the 2022. This is really a cleanup bill with cleanup language. It is not restrictive to those who are trying to get a license or those who are coming from out of state to comply with our contracting laws. This basically affects 5 different contracting boards. Other people will be here to speak on its behalf. I want to commend Sean Marie and the Legislative Council. She did a fantastic job, worked very many hours on this to get the language correct. We believe it's done very well. And preceding me, I'd like Roland Weekly, who is the chairman of the 5 boards, to come and address the bill directly. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Lincoln? All right, Senator Lewis.
Mr. Lemke, what about the advertisement? I got a problem with last time we changed the law with contractors and everything, that those who had built houses prior to, if they'd gone to their city or wherever they were working and got a copy of where they built houses, they will be all right. That advertisement didn't go out, and a lot of them got caught. It had to end up working for somebody else rather than themselves. So how do y'all plan, if we do this, how do y'all plan to advertise so everybody will know what the rules are and how to get on board?
Mr. Chairman, I do not believe that is in this particular bill, and I'll have to get back with you on that.
I'm talking about if we do this, it needs to be well advertised, that everybody knows what the conditions are.
Oh, I see what you're
The
saying.
last time they were told, but they never advertised what it was and what the deadline was and that kind of thing. A lot of folks got left out.
That's a very good point. I understand what you're saying.
So how do y'all plan to advertise this?
Quite frankly, we're going to have to look at that. I think that's a good point.
You know, it's kind of hard for me talking about passing something and you got to look at it. I need to know. Okay.
All right, yeah, we will not be voting today, Senator Lucas, and I will ask folks to let us know your thoughts on that. Give me any information so we may be able to address Senator Lucas's concerns in any kind of committee sub before anything were to take place. Other questions for Mr. Lemke? All right, thank you very much. I got Jerry Hayes, United Electric Company.
Can we have Mr. Rowland go first?
That'd be fine. You can defer for him to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate the fact that y'all are taking time to hear us. First off, I'm kind of putting something as a little bit of a framework. I'm the chairman over the Electrical Licensing Board, also the chairman over Trade 4, which is the utilities, plumbing, conditioned air, low voltage, and electrical. This whole bill started as a process of that these laws were created back in the 80s, and they were very disjointed. It's like the plumbing created their law, the mechanical did theirs, and there's just lack of continuity between some of these laws. An example would be that there is no provision in the electrical law to allow a contractor to continue to keep his business operational should the license holder die. But there is in mechanical. So in turn, we were trying to look at this from a standpoint of saying there needs to be a little bit more cohesiveness or fairness across the board. If mechanical didn't do one thing, it's a good thing. You know, electrical needs to, but in the absence of being in the law, electrical's not allowed to. Well, this came to light in the sense that we have an executive director with the Secretary of State that's kind of an overseer of these committees. And in cooperation with them, the Secretary of State and this executive director, collectively, we've put a lot of effort in trying to identify areas that have been, you know, difficult for us as a board to administer the task that's really in front of us. So along that lines, even the Secretary of State has brought out a lot of grammatical or clerical aspects of the law where there's just differences between different trades. And that's where a lot of this consists of, is trying to clean some of that up. Going back to other discrepancies, there's like in electrical, it called for a chief electrical engineer. Chief electrical inspector is required to be on electrical board. There are no chief electrical inspectors. They don't use that title anymore. It's not used. So in turn, our hands are tied. We haven't had an inspector on our board for 5+ years. I think 9, in fact, maybe 8. But so it's language like that that this bill is trying to clean up in that aspect. Another one is continuing education. 4 of the boards have a continuing education requirement. Low voltage doesn't. It just seems that, particularly with low voltage, with the technology, is it's changing almost by the hour. They're one that, continuing education seems to be important. And they do have a life safety function, fire alarm systems, mass notification. They deal with the safety of the public. So we have tried through cooperative effort on all the trades and with the Secretary of State to try to bring something that starts getting the language a little bit closer together and more uniform in terms of applying it across all the trades. To address advertising, this is possible, as I understand it. The Secretary of State should be able to send out notices to all licensed contractors through their contact information. And it would be, I would think, the licensed contractors that we really care most about getting this word out to as a primary concern. Is that addressing what you're talking about?
I think you need to do more than that. I think you need to go into the regular newspaper, whatever, and advertise that this is happening. The last time we made a major change, contractors, when we did contractors, if they had been building houses prior to and showed where they got a building permit, they were allowed to stay as contractors. If not, they had to pass a battery test and everything to be a contractor just to build houses.
Okay, this
I understand that. What I'm saying, if you do this, make sure everybody, and y'all do the advertising so everybody know what the game rule is and not be caught in the dark and say, well, I didn't know.
Okay, well, these rules and changes should only address contractors, existing contractors. We're not doing anything that changes trying to become a contractor, anything along that
Well,
line.
he's got to abide by this if
That's
it's a
correct.
contractor. So what I'm saying is, make sure they know, because I don't want them calling me at the wee hours in the morning telling me, well, I didn't know.
Right. I can talk to the Secretary of State in regards to that and see what we can do in that regard. So, but like I say, the other thing is too, along this line, this is not affecting the trade people, the electricians. This is literally the contractor, typically the owner of a business. His workers, this does not influence anything related at that level. It's strictly at the, I would say, the ownership level or the contractor type level in this case. So from
Well, you still got in, if he dies, you got a 90-day period.
not now,
That they can operate.
not now, not for electrical. HVAC or air conditioned air, yes, they do. That's what we're trying. That's one of the things we're trying to get into this.
Let me ask you this. I know you may not be through with your comments yet, Roland, but and we're going to let you be heard totally. I was sort of tipped off by the Lieutenant Governor's office that this bill had not gone through the GORC process, and I think that's been confirmed by the Governor's office. Explain that process to us and whether or not it's been utilized here on this bill.
And I can't speak fully on that, but as I understand it, the GORC deals with trying to restrict trades. These are not restricting anything. You've got a license, you keep your license. You may have to go get continuing education. You might be given freedom to pass your business on to someone else after you die and giving them 90-day grace period. So we're not in any way restricting anyone in obtaining a license. It has nothing in here that does that. It's strictly trying to bring uniformity between the different trades in most cases, or clarifying the grammar so that it makes sense or is better organized.
Okay.
Does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
that does.
Okay.
Go ahead, your other thoughts on the bill. We didn't mean to get to.
No, you
interrupt
didn't.
in
I
midstream.
pretty much wrapped it up. I think the key is, though, that, like I say, this really came out of the boards. You know, I'm a licensed professional engineer. I'm not a contractor. I don't have a dog in the hunt here. You know, I'm not affected by this in any way. I'm on the board. I see where there's deficiencies and things that could be improved and made better. And in that regard, basically, between myself and the executive director, we took the initiative to kind of get this ball rolling in that aspect. So, actually, we think this is a big improvement. It's not doesn't have any negatives as I can see at all.
I can tell a lot of thought's been put into it. It's comprehensive.
Yeah.
Um,
And another example of just something that needed to be changed. The law was talking about you had to advertise in the newspaper and the yellow pages. How many people are advertising in that nowadays? You're on Facebook, you're on some social media, whatever, and the law didn't address that. So in turn, there's cases of where we're trying to say, look, if you're going to advertise, then you need to identify yourself as being licensed. You're legally able to practice in the state of Georgia, and just not limited to the yellow pages and newspapers, because they don't advertise there anymore. Technology's changed.
Do you know whether there's a comparable bill on the House side that's active this year?
Lee, you might be able to answer that.
Is there a comparable House bill to this that's active this year?
No, sir.
Okay. Because it occurs to me if there are just cleanup things in here that don't really impact the licensing, that there may be an opportunity during the legislative process this year to put this on some type of bill.
Yeah,
That's one
like I
reason I
said.
want to go ahead and hear it.
Yeah, and like I say, I know of nothing in here that deals with the process of being licensed
Okay.
at all. Okay, thank you,
very
gentlemen.
much. All right,
Appreciate it.
now, Jerry Hayes, did you have a question, Mr. Chairman? All right. One question from Senator Tippins. Hang on there, Roland.
I appreciate our conversation that we've had earlier about this, and I expressed my concern at that time. I understand there may be needs for continuing education, but the people that I've talked to in the low voltage industry says that industry changes every month or 6 weeks in terms of new products coming out, and each one of the manufacturers have product support lines. As far as any major changes, I mean, speaking as a utility contractor, I've been licensed ever since they had to be licensed. The continuing education sometimes is at times more of a just check the boxes. The main things that govern our business are safety rules, regulations. We have changes in equipment, we have changes in material, but it does not change the basic nature of our work. I can't speak as a low voltage contractor, but I have spoken with some, and the concerns that I hear throughout industry and all disciplines is that continuing education, and many times those sessions are mandated to be held in person by the people that are providing them, and are not online and cannot be accessed at times that are convenient to people that have the need to be working every day, especially small private outfits that the owner is the one doing the work as well. So, I think anytime we talk about mandating continuing education, we need to make sure that there's a need for it, and that once a year is sufficient, because obviously if you have major changes, I'm not sure that you want to possibly have to wait for 11 months to hit the next one, and also that it's available online and can be accessed to when it's convenient to the people that need to do it. That looks to me like that needs to be foundational to any requirement of continuing education, unless it's skill-based and you're acquiring a specific set of skills.
Thank you.
To answer
Sure, there
that,
was a question in that somewhere.
well, if you don't mind, I'd like to address that from the standpoint. As I said, I'm a professional engineer. I'm required to have 15 hours of continuing education every year, period. We're only asking for 4. That's typically that is the requirement presently today is 4 hours. I have obtained all my continuing education. In fact, I had like 22 hours of continuing education last year on the books, all of which I didn't pay a penny. I either did it through trade organizations or through vendors or other types of organizations that put out continuing ed. So the cost is not there. There's not a burden of cost. I would say over half, probably two-thirds of the continuing education I did was on the internet. Now, it may require me to do it at lunch, because it's a live webinar or something like that, but as far as me having to travel across town or whatever, that wasn't the case. So access to it has not really been a concern. I do low voltage design as an engineer, and the concern I have, there are components of the low voltage system from a life safety standpoint. Like you say, the technology is changing. And the technology, one of the problems with it, it can be good, it can be bad. It can be misapplied, misunderstood as to how to apply technology. So part of the idea behind continuing education, even through vendors, is to try to get the word out, look, this is the proper way to do it. Don't do it over here. This may be easy for you, but over here, is the right way. You do it the other way, it's going to fail. And like I say, low voltage is dealing with fire alarm systems, mass notification. To give you an example, in the airport of the Atlanta airport, the fire alarm system goes off. It has to kill the sound system, the announcing of the people getting on the plane. It's required by code to do that. And it's that type of thing in the continuing education that me personally feel like that if it not only brings about new information to people, new technologies and things of that nature, new codes and new standards, because they're changing along with the technology. If the technology changes, usually the codes and standards are in a race to catch up, because technology is moving faster than the codes and standards. But the point is, it gives them an opportunity to hear other people in these seminars and webinars bring up concerns that they have. So the information in exchange I find to be invaluable. I can't think of a single webinar or seminar that I've been to that, and I'm in this business for 50 years, I still get something out of it. It may only be 2%, but that was 2% I didn't have when I walked in there. So I like I say, both doing the design of low voltage and as an engineer and understanding how it's applied to the industry, I'm a big advocate of it. And like I say, it's required of the other trades. For example, take electrical. How many things have changed in your house with electrical? Maybe added a light sensitive wall switch. How about plumbing? Maybe gone to a water saving toilet, TV, or air conditioning, maybe gone to more efficient air conditioning. But take electronics. You started off with vinyl records, you went to cassette tapes, 8 tracks, Walkmans, MP3s, CDs, DVDs. You have Blu-ray, you have 4K, you've got the vacuum tube TV to the flat screen. The low voltage side is changing exponentially compared to the other trades, and yet there's no requirement for continuing ed. That's the concern I have from just
Okay.
my observation.
All right, thank you. We got
Thank
three
you.
other speakers need to be heard.
It needs to be on I have
Go ahead, Mr. Hayes.
I'm not going to take as long as Roland, since I'm not as old as he is. I haven't been doing this 50 years. I am a 5th generation Georgian, electrical contractor in Marietta, Georgia, 36 years. I got my electrical license in '78. I'm not sure when I got my low voltage license, but I'm going to throw a couple numbers at you guys. There's just south of 9,000 licensed electrical contractors in the state of Georgia. Right at 3,500 low voltage contractors in the state of Georgia. Most of which, and this is anecdotal information, I don't know exactly, are like me, hold both licenses. So the continuing ed that is floating into the low voltage on this bill is more of a cleanup so that the low voltage contractors match the electrical contractors, the plumbing contractors, and the HVAC. and the utility contractors with the same amount of continuing ed. Now, to address Senator Tippin's question and points, the available low voltage is set by those 5 boards. Excuse me, the available continuing ed is set. So we, as board members, we set the continuing ed and how it's delivered. I just finished my Alabama continuing ed this past weekend. You won't hear me say this about anything else to do with Alabama. They're only ahead of us on how they record it. They're way behind us on football. But I took it online, setting at my desk at home, desk at the office, or whatever. And almost all of it is moving that way. So we allow that. And if you understand what I said, most of the low voltage contractors also hold electrical contractor license. So that continuing ed is going to overlap. This is a cleanup. I've read this bill 50 times if I've read it once. Roland and I review the complaints that come into the state of Georgia for the board. Most of those complaints have to do with misunderstanding of the license law. To maybe address something that Mr. Lucas brought up, this board does not look at home builders or general contractors. So I think what you brought up doesn't have anything to do with this bill.
Didn't mean to imply that. What I'm saying is, we had a major change in contractors. We put in state law they had to be licensed.
Correct.
And if you were not licensed, but you had built houses, you had to show a permit where you had done it. If you didn't do it by that date, if you had a bad check, you couldn't be a contractor.
Correct.
And that's what I'm saying. You had folks that got put out of business because they didn't understand that they had to show prior to that date that they had built a house.
This law will be advertised on the state of Georgia Secretary of State's website. That's where you find it now. You can go there and find that. You can find the rules. You can come visit the board. You can ask for special permission, and so on. All we've done here, and Roland and I spent a lot of time, and I can tell you those were all volunteer hours. We're not paid to serve on the state licensing board. I do it because I think it's the right thing to do. I think that we do a good job. I think we've got a good board. But going back to what Roland said, we haven't been able to put a 5th person on the electrical licensing board because it requires that we use a chief electrical inspector, which don't exist any longer. So that's what we're doing. We're cleaning those things up. Senator Tippins, I hear you about continuing ed. I think we're probably just going to disagree on that a little bit. It'll be fine. I think it's important that we put that out there, and I like the fact that we have continuing ed. One last thing. In the state of Georgia, we do not license low voltage technicians, nor do we license journeyman electricians. We only license contractors. We're not suggesting that every technician has to take continuing ed, nor are we suggesting that every electrician has to take continuing ed. Although, I think it would be a good idea. But that's not what we're proposing. So, any questions? I'll be glad to attempt to answer them.
Okay. I don't see any questions. Thank you for being
Thanks.
with us. Tucker Green. Yeah, come on up, Senator Jones. All right, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here on behalf of the Conditioned Air Contractors of Georgia. I'm not going to add much, but I just want to say that we are members of our license board. We're one of the license boards governed under this that would affect this by this law. We were a part of the process, and we have no concerns with it. Really, of our group and our board, it probably affects us the least. Most of the things that they're kind of bringing up to speed, some of the other boards, it already applies to us, and we're governed by that. But it is largely, we've reviewed it a number of times. It's cleaning up existing law, and really just kind of modernizing this code section with the license board. So we're in support of the legislation, and if y'all have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do you know who wrote the bill, who drafted it?
My understanding is, as they talked about, they worked very closely with the Secretary of State's office. Then the legislation went out to representatives on all 5 licensing boards. I received copied in on some of this dating back to December when people were working on it in the off session and giving their feedback, and then it finally went. And I think Sean Marie was the legislative counsel that was drafting the legislation.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Mo Thrash. Final person signed up on it anyway today, Mr. Thrash. You can hear the lunch.
Yeah, we're going to get out of here real
rambling
quick,
out
Mr.
there in
Chairman.
the
Thank
hallway.
you.
We got 6 minutes to go. Go fire away.
I represent the Georgia Utility Contract Association, and my only regret is we didn't get this bill in sooner, because it is needed. It's needed desperately, and advertising, if it does change, to get the word out to the memberships throughout the state is urgently important. But it's our mistake that this bill hadn't come before the Georgia legislature to get an approval before crossover day tomorrow, because you already have heard who it affects. 5 different licensing boards controlled by the Secretary of State's office that has been in great need of changes, of updates to the law. And that's all it is, an update, bringing it up to common sense. And we appreciate your support. We hope we can get a little change here and a little change there between now and the side die. And we're going to work on that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm welcoming any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Thrash?
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to appoint a subcommittee to thrash this out. And Senator Lucas, I'd like for you to chair that if you're willing to.
Be glad to.
And I'm going to appoint Senator Harbison and Senator Tippins to that subcommittee. What I'd really like for y'all to do is look at this bill thoroughly, have at least one hearing on it this week if you can, because it's going to get hectic around here after tomorrow. We're going to have a flood of new bills hitting us on Wednesday, and we'll start hearing them in committee Thursday. This looks to me like there ought to be parts of it that don't need GORC approval. Parts of it I fear might, but to the extent we can get something in a final format that might fit in or ride along with any other legislation this year, I want y'all to try to see if we can do it. And if you're obviously very alert and astute to the advertising requirements, if you need to add those to the bill, Sean Marie is here. She'll work with you on it after hearing from people. If I could get you all to do that, I'd appreciate it, because I think this is something that's been needed. I don't believe it to be controversial, and it seems to me like it probably is a little more urgent than it has been treated up until this point in the session. Okay?
Be glad to.
All right. I appreciate you, Senator Lucas. All right, we are going to meet Thursday afternoon. I did get a message that apparently there is a health problem with Representative Howard, but I'm going to put his bill back on for Thursday afternoon. And we're also going to have Vance Smith's House bill. I'm not certain that I know the number. Deals with underground utilities. Senator Tippins has been working. You'll remember last year there were a lot of folks, a lot of chefs in the kitchen on that bill, and everybody agreed to talk in the off season to hammer it out. I'm led to believe by everybody that that was accomplished, and the House has passed the bill, and I'd like to go ahead and deal with that bill on Thursday also. Those are the only two I'm presently intending to hear, and quite frankly, I think we have heard pretty much all the bills that the sponsors are continuing to request hearings on. so far. There may be one other I'm missing. So I think we're up to speed, ready for the onslaught to come after tomorrow. We'll be geared up with a clean slate. I appreciate everybody's attendance today, and we'll look forward to seeing all of you Thursday afternoon at 3. We are adjourned. There's food out in the hallway for the Rules Committee people.